Okay, so you guys request this video almost every single year, and last year I made a video on how to save peppers through the winter, aka how to keep them going so you get a little bit of a bigger bush next year. Now, for those of you not interested in waxing, the benefit to a bigger bush is that you end up with more flowers, more fruit, and ultimately more room for leaves, and that means more photosynthesis. More photosynthesis means more power, and the cycle just continues. So every year you choose to overwinter a pepper is another year where that plant begins to get bigger. And that would be the reason for why you'd want to do it. Now, another reason for why you'd want to do it is from the climate we're in, it takes a while for peppers to go from seedling to full plant stage. And when you don't have an indoor growing setup or you have limited space, you may not want to invest that much time in the seedlings and would rather invest the time in the full plant. Now, you do not need a light or anything special to overwinter peppers. I know, contrary to popular belief, the method that I use actually sends them into a dormancy, if you will, and then you just simply bring them out of that dormancy. What I will say is with the method that I'm teaching you, there are several people in the Geek crew who have tried this and it works, but out of say 10 plants, 2-ish on average is generally what passes away. So if you're gonna try this, you wanna try it with at least 2 plants, if not more, because there is a risk of some death. In my opinion, the risks are a lot lower and a heck of a lot less stressful compared to that of which you would just normally do for overwintering peppers. So let's get into it. Okay, so I have 2 peppers here. One is very obviously very green, and the other one is kind of a lighter green, almost lime green with red jalapeno peppers on it. Now, this plant is very clearly doing much better, and if you watch my pepper experiment, you know why this plant is doing much better. But regardless, I do want to save this plant. However, we've been incredibly warm during the nights, and we've been incredibly warm during the days, and that's abnormal for us this time of year. And because of that, this bad boy has decided he is not going into dormancy yet. So I need to actually leave him outdoors despite the fact that it is beginning to get cooler. Now, what I'm watching for is freezing. I don't want it to freeze. I want to bring it indoors if it's going to freeze, but I do want to leave it outside if those temperatures are beginning to dip below the +10 mark. A way that you can help this, a way you can help aid the plant into getting a little bit less heat is to actually move it away from the rest of your plants, because your plants in general are kind of like a heat sink. Move it away from your house, particularly under your eaves, because there's a little bit of a heat space there, and put it kind of in the open. Push it into the shade rather than in full sun, and that will begin to force the plant into a dormancy before you end up with the frost. Now, if you're headed for a frost and there's no way to avoid it, what I would do is, if it continues to stay cold, is to bring it indoors, but put it in a cooler space in the home and try to restrict as much light as humanly possible. Okay, so what the plant should look like is this. This is a plant that is well on its way to the nighttime, and that is what we're aiming for. So this plant here, you can begin to see the leaves are beginning to actually change color, similar to that of a tree. The peppers are very obviously done because they are bright red, and ultimately speaking, the plant's starting to look a little bit sick and unhappy, but this is the perfect time to take action. So what you want to do is actually go through and remove the leaves. Now, when I say remove the leaves, I actually mean remove the leaves and the petiole that connects to what looks like a main stem. So what I mean by this is simply removing quite a bit of the plant and then leaving it look like a stick. This is important. The reason why I do this is because many times there's a lot of pests that come in on our leaves, and they happen during the summertime. Over time, the bugs will move into the soil, move into the space, but then there are also beneficial bugs that are going in and eating them. However, when you bring them indoors, you don't have the beneficial bugs anymore. You're only left with the pests, and the pests eventually take over. And if you have houseplants or if you're overwintering anything else, you want to try to avoid this because it can take out an entire collection very quickly, only speaking from experience, and that's why I decided to start adopting this method. Little bit of a pro tip here. This is a great time to help with branching. So if you did not know, you can actually top the plant. When you top, it redistributes a hormone called auxin. Now, auxin is responsible for causing plants to grow up and out. And when we redistribute it, it takes away the leading edge of the plant. And so the plant no longer is putting energy into going this way, and rather is going to put energy into going downwards into these other nodes, which causes the Ving. So if you want something that's bushier rather than just a straight line, and you don't have the opportunity to chop in, say, where you are, such as Canada, this is a great time to do so. So it goes up. You have, this would be like your normal one stem. So year one, you're going to cut just at the base anywhere. If you don't have this Y, if you have a Y, you're going to follow it up to the next Y. So then after you have kind of this Y here, then you would follow up to these. And then this is a Y on its own. So I would actually leave this one. This one, however, isn't Ying off, and you can see it beginning to kind of die back. So I'd actually cut this here or rip it there. And now that's going to Y off. And then on this end, you have a node. It is Ying. If you wanted, you could cut it back to here or leave it. This one here is beginning to Y back, so it actually break it off right there. So once everything is completely stripped down, you have two options. Option number one is leaving it in its original container and letting that soil dry out as much as possible. We want to watch and make sure the soil's drying out as much as possible. And when you know the plant is beginning to decline, or you want to force the plant to decline, you actually want to back off on watering altogether in hopes of the evapotranspiration, aka the plant and the atmosphere around the plant, is able to absorb or remove a lot of the water from that soil system. We want this to be darn near bone dry, both for pest purposes and to avoid root rot. So once we have the soil dried down, we can just place this in storage. You want to put this not by a sunny window, but in a shaded spot in your home where you can view it and look to see when it begins to put on new leaves. The purpose for this is we don't want it to start just putting on leaves right away, because then you're going to have a very big plant indoors, unless of course that is what you want. So what I like to do is place it in my bedroom, and the reason for that is because the blinds are usually closed in the bedroom all the time, and then you combine that with the fact that there's no real lights on during the day. There's like a little bit of ambient light through the blinds, and I can watch it every single day. When I get ready in the morning, I can see the plant in the corner, and I can determine if it needs to be moved underneath a grow light or next to a window. When you begin to see new growth, and by beginning to see new growth, I mean it's very obvious, it's really starting to put out. I'm not talking like little tiny buds or stems, I'm talking more stem growth, lots of leaves. Once you begin to notice this, you can then take that plant and put it next to a window, preferably very south facing, the more light the better, or under a grow light. Now, what I will say is if you don't want to leave your plant in its original container because you believe it has pests, or you're worried about gnats, or whatever the case is, then I would actually try to pull the plant out, remove as much of the root ball as possible. Don't leave much of that behind, and then repot it up into new dry potting soil. Do not water that new dry potting soil whatsoever. And if you're choosing to reuse potting soil, then you're going to want to check out this video right here. And that video down there is what Google says you should watch. So go check it out.